So, you know what? I think we better get started. So, Rachel, I was telling the group we're going to do, there we go. We're going to do every other week because I'm writing this as we go. And this is so that the class can be interesting to you. Yeah, you can close that.
There I am.
Start off with this picture of the church. This is by Charles Height. He's one of our fabulous members, and he's a photographer, and he took this picture, and he's given us permission to share it and use it liberally, which is amazing because as you've seen the cost of this work, this is an incredible gift, and I love this picture of the church. So, church, yes.
We have 9 members, and it's the church, so everybody lost the person.
Oh, cool. Mrs. Mitchell was saying that they took a picture at the 90th with the church. And did Charles take it? Okay, but they took a great big picture of the whole congregation in front of the church. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So I'll repeat what folks are saying so you can hear it. That way we're also recording this. So that way folks who can't be here today are going to be able to see it. And hopefully the technology will all work.
Yes, hope so.
All right, so we are the people called Methodists, and the goal of this class is to sort of do a deep dive into Methodism and to learn some things that you guys may not know, because lots of us have been Methodists our whole lives. I have. I was a cradle Methodist, which is an old thing. They don't even have that anymore, but they used to put you on the rolls as a cradle Methodist. And I actually have a certificate somewhere as a cradle United Methodist woman. Which was a thing back in the day. So I'm dating myself, but many of us have grown up Methodists, but we may not know some of the history. We may not know some of the structure. So we're going to sort of today take kind of a balcony view. And then as we go along, we're going to dig more into where we're going. So that's a big thing. We have a lot of history. There's our deep dive into Methodism. And so often in graphics, we pick women and things, but I found a guy. So why not? It should be equal. So the expectation that I have for the group is that we're casual, that you guys interrupt when you have questions. I do not purport to be an expert, but I will give you the benefit of my seminary education. And if I don't know the answer, I'll say, I don't know, but I'll look it up and I'll have an answer before we meet the next time. That's another benefit of that 2-week gap, because if I can't find the answer, I'll call a professor. And some of my friends are now professors, which is bonkers. So, but I've got lots of resources. So I expect the format to be pretty casual. Popcorn in, question and answer. You guys know me well enough now. I've been here a whole year and a little bit more. You know that I'm ADHD enough that you can interrupt me and I can still keep going. And that will actually make the class richer because it won't just be me up here lecturing. That's boring. We are planning to meet from 10 till maybe 10:40. I don't plan to go longer than an hour because the average adult attention span is actually only 12 minutes. So, especially now, that's all I don't want us to be here for very long. That's another reason I preach kind of short, is because the average attention span is 12 minutes. So I want to get in, I want to hit it hard and give you something to think about during the week and not just give you a good opportunity to have a Sunday nap. So the sort of the format of the class, so today is kind of like introduction, getting to know you, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the structure, organization, and administration of the United Methodist Church. And I have some videos from the United Methodist Church about some of that structure. So some of the talking today will be videos and not just me, which is good. Next week, or excuse me, when I say next week, I mean October 19th, the next week that we gather together. So I don't mean next week, next Tuesday, but in 2 weeks. We're going to talk about history. We're going to learn about John Wesley, Charles Wesley, Susanna Wesley, who was their mama, and she is tough. Asbury and Coke, which is where we get Cokesbury, the name. We're going to learn lots of good things. I'm going to be digging out of this book. It's called Wesley and the People Called Methodists. This is one of my seminary textbooks. So we're going to use this book. We're going to be being United Methodist in America, United Methodism in America. which is a compact history, and it's by John McElhenney. I don't show you these books to say you have to go out and read them. I'll do that for you, and we'll share that information. But I wanted you to see there is some scholarship behind this. It's not just off the top of my head. And then the last book is actually here on my Kindle. It's called Being United Methodist in the Bible Belt, and that's by Joyner. Being United Methodist in the Bible Belt. Because living in the Bible Belt affects our understanding of Methodism. And sometimes we have ideas that are ingrained in us thinking this is the way it is, when in reality, that theology may be more Baptist, or it may be more Catholic than actually Methodist. So it's an opportunity for us to sort of clarify where Methodist stands. So the next time we gather will be history. The next time after that, we're going to do 3 sections of what we believe. So in the first section of what we believe, we're going to talk doctrine and theology. I'm going to introduce you to the Book of Discipline, the Book of Worship, the Book of Resolutions. By the way, the Book of Resolutions is one you may not have heard of, but the Book of Resolutions is what Methodists believe about gun control, what Methodists believe about birth control, what Methodists believe about all the hot button issues you could possibly think of. This is the United Methodist stance on those things. And the last time it was updated is 2016. It is looked at every quadrennium, which is every 4 years, except when we're in a global pandemic. Because for us right now, this quadrennium has lasted 5 years, and it may keep going, which makes me feel really bad for some of my peers who are serving on, say, the board of ministry, the board of ordained ministry, because instead of getting to roll off after their 4 years, they have to stay until the next time that the body meets to reappoint people. So we are in an extra long quadrennium. And I tried to find out if this had happened before when we had the Spanish flu, and it looks like we didn't have to go with extra. The Spanish flu had more compliance with vaccinations and masks, and it didn't drag on quite as much as this one, but I digress. So we're going to talk about theology, doctrine, what we believe, and then the next week we're going to dig into what does the Methodist Church say about the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit? What do we know about grace? What is this Methodist understanding, this triune 3-part grace? We're going to talk about what are the sacraments in the Methodist Church. We have 2 sacraments. Some people think there are 7. That's the Catholic Church, and we'll talk about that. And then the last week we gather, which will be November 30th, we're going to talk about the quadrilateral, which is a concept that is attributed to John Wesley, though it was probably more accurate to say it was coined by Reuben Job, which is the 3 simple rules, and the quadrilateral is the way that Methodists are supposed to think when we make decisions. And then how do we serve as Methodists? There is an actual list of endorsed organizations in the Methodist Church here in the Columbia District, and it goes for the conference as well, and actually was a part of writing that, so y'all are going to get to see it. These are like Epworth, Killingsworth, all of the different homes and organizations that we as Methodists intentionally support. We're going to talk a little bit about the way forward and what's next for Methodists, because we are getting ready for another general conference. General conference is when all of the Methodists around the world gather together, and that's a big day. So there's sort of our overview of what to expect from this course. Now, let's get into the more fun part. What do you want to learn about Methodism? And for those of you who are online, if you'll use the chat, I'm hoping I'm going to be able to access that. And if not, Rachel, I'll follow up with you and get your question. And you guys who are here, I've got Postit Notes. So careful. All right. So I'll give you guys a moment to write down. And by the way, I know some of you are not like on the spot thinkers like I am. So if you get home and you're like, oh, I had a question, text it to me or email it to me or just call me. By the way, my cell phone is 828-442-6032. It's in the bulletin every week. You should have access to it. I'm really accessible. But you can shoot me your question via text or email, or just call me and I'll write it down. But I want to make sure that I'm teaching things that are actually interesting to you. So, ta-da! All right. So as you're writing, you guys can be thinking, got Postit Notes out there. No pressure on that. So the Methodist Church, what we're going to start with is sort of the structure, the organization, and the administration. The United Methodist Church does not have a central headquarters or a single executive leader. So a lot of times we think of a corporation and they'll have like a CEO and they'll have all this structure. We in the Methodist Church are set up a little bit different. We're more connectional, and our organizational structure is not so much a straight line down, but kind of circles that overlap with each other. We have a general conference, the Council of Bishops, and the Judicial Council. And the Judicial Council is sometimes called the highest court. It's 9 people. It looks a little bit like our Supreme Court, actually. And we're going to learn a little bit more about that in a video. So these entities are required by our Constitution to be part of our structure. And you can read more about our Constitution in this very engaging nighttime reading. Right to sleep. Sometimes it actually is interesting. We joke about the Book of Discipline being really boring, but in here, the Book of Discipline lays out the structure of how we are to be Methodists. One of the things that we used to get picked on for when John Wesley and Charles Wesley were founding Methodism back when they were teenagers, they would get made fun of because they were so methodical. They were so rigid. And we are. We're not rigid in our theology, but we are rigid in our structure. We have a way of doing things, and the way we do things is right. And we have a lot of meetings and a lot of committees and a lot of organizations. So here's the point where we're going to have some videos. I have 3 videos, which I promise I will not do to you again, because I know videos can get a little repetitive, but these 3 are so well done that I really wanted you to see them. And they're each no longer, I think the longest one is like 3 minutes. So we're going to watch some videos. So first is the general conference. And hopefully this will all work beautifully. And Rachel, I'm crossing my fingers you'll be able to hear.
This is a quick overview of the General Conference and how it serves the United Methodist Church. 3 main bodies govern the United Methodist Church: the General Conference, the Council of Bishops, and the Judicial Council. The General Conference is the body that sets official policy and speaks as the entire denomination. As the highest legislative body of the United Methodist Church, General Conference holds the power to revise the Book of Discipline and the Book of Resolutions, while also initiating amendments to the denomination's constitution. General Conference normally meets once every quadrennium, or every 4 years. The Council of Bishops may also call a special session to address a specific topic. Only 2 special sessions have been called since the United Methodist Church formed in 1968. Any congregation, conference, organization, or person may submit a petition to General Conference to change the Book of Discipline or the Book of Resolutions. Further petitions may also be introduced from the floor by delegates. Most legislation requires a simple majority vote to pass. Amendments to the denomination's constitution require a 2/3 vote of the General Conference, followed by a 2/3 aggregate vote of the lay and clergy members present and voting in the annual conferences. However, changes to Restrictive Rules 1 and 2 in the Constitution, which establish the doctrinal standards, require a 3/4 aggregate vote of the lay and clergy members present and voting in the annual conferences. General Conference also approves the budget allocating apportioned funds. Official documents, such as the United Methodist Hymnal and the Book of Worship, and official teachings on subjects such as baptism and Holy Communion. Delegates are United Methodists from around the world elected by their annual, missionary, or provisional conference. The total number of delegates at General Conference must always fall between 600 and 1,000 people. The General Conference consists of an equal number of lay and clergy delegates. Conferences elect their delegates no more than 2 years prior to the next General Conference session. Lay members to annual conference elect lay delegates, and clergy members elect clergy delegates. The United Methodist Church has a concordant agreement with 4 autonomous Methodist churches to send a total of 10 voting delegates. The Book of Discipline contains the formula for determining how delegates are apportioned from each of the conferences. The Secretary of the General Conference determines the total number of delegates and applies that formula to determine how many will come from each conference to meet the total number required. Every conference is allowed to send at least 2 delegates to General Conference, regardless of its size. 1 lay, 1 clergy. All delegates are eligible to vote on all legislation considered by the General Conference. Bishops preside during the General Conference session, but have neither voice nor vote. They do not address the conference unless given permission by General Conference. The Book of Discipline, the Book of Resolutions, and other official documents affected by General Conference are updated following the session to include newly adopted legislation. In most instances, legislation becomes effective on January 1st of the following year. Amendments to the Constitution become official only after they are ratified. The Judicial Council may be petitioned to review any resolution or legislation passed by General Conference to determine its constitutionality or legality, its meaning or effect. In summary, the General Conference sets the policies for the work of the Church. It also adopts the worldwide denominational budget. By doing these things, the General Conference seeks to strengthen the mission to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. To learn more, check out Chapter 4, Section 1 of the Book of Discipline, or visit resourceumc.org.
Okay. So that is General Conference. So that kind of gives you an idea of how that works. We did have a special call General Conference in recent history. That was in 2018, or is it 2019? I think it was 19 too. But we had a special General Conference called, and not a lot came out of it. Yeah, they were trying to figure out where the church stands on LGBTQ people, as well as some other issues, and they're deciding to try and come up with a way forward, whether the church would split or not split. And basically what happens is it kind of, in a way, got tabled, and it's waiting for the next General Conference. The thing that's inhibiting General Conference from happening is COVID, and then the fact that here in the United States, we have higher access to vaccines, and more people slowly are getting more vaccines. But the other countries, because the Methodist Church is not just the United States, we're a big part of it, but the family tree of the Methodist Church is actually pretty big. There are 54 annual conferences in the United Methodist Church here in the US, and there are 75 annual conferences in Africa, Europe, and the Philippines. So all of those representatives have to come to wherever we're going to hold General Conference. And so we have to wait until they can travel, until it's safe for them to come. And so they pushed annual General Conference off. Excuse me, I don't mean to say annual, but they pushed General Conference back because of the pandemic. And then there's a debate as to whether or not they'll be able to gather this year or in 2022. And there's also been talk about pushing it all the way to 2024. Yeah, visas, and they have to. Yeah, so Laura is highlighting that they have to have visas, and they can't come there's a certain limit to when they can come. So there's a lot of moving parts. And in the meantime, the church is sort of left in a little bit of limbo. And I know you guys have been hearing about what is the direction the Methodists are going to go in terms of LGBTQ plus people. Where are we going to go in terms of, are we going to be traditional or all of that? And you may have heard of some churches already stepping out of the denomination to be their own thing. And we'll dig into that later. I don't want us to get bogged down in that, but we'll get into that later, probably that last session. But General Conference does a lot of things, and it's really important. And so there's that. So the next part is the Council of Bishops. So of those 54 conferences, annual conferences in the United States, there are 46 bishops. And of the 75 annual conferences in Africa, Europe, and the Philippines, there are 20 bishops, which I thought was really interesting because that's a large number of conferences and not that many bishops. But it's based on size, population, and also travelability of the area. Not every conference, some conferences share a bishop, particularly out west where the land is really big, but the population is not, that kind of thing. So the Council of Bishops, let's learn a little bit about them.
This is a quick overview of the Council of Bishops and how it serves the United Methodist Church. There are three main bodies that govern the United Methodist Church: the General Conference, the Council of Bishops, and the Judicial Council. The Council of Bishops consists of all active and retired bishops in the United Methodist Church. In 2020, the church has 66 active bishops. The council generally meets twice a year, with additional meetings as needed. Each bishop oversees the mission and ministry of an episcopal area based on the direction set by General Conference and the local context. Bishops are elders elected by voting delegates of a jurisdictional or central conference. Bishops in the jurisdictional conferences in the United States are elected for life. In the central conferences in Africa, Asia, and Europe, the term of their service as bishops varies and may require re-election. Bishops provide spiritual leadership to the global denomination as well as for the episcopal area of one or more annual conferences to which they are assigned. Each bishop provides day-to-day leadership for the episcopal area for a 4-year term. Within their areas, bishops preside over annual conference sessions and appoint ordained and licensed clergy to local churches and other places of service, including as district superintendents. By discipline, bishops may serve 2 terms in one episcopal area and can be assigned a 3rd for missional purposes. Bishops are then assigned to a different episcopal area by their jurisdictional or central conference. Retired bishops no longer serve an episcopal area, but continue to be a part of the council. Together, as the council, they provide guidance in carrying out the church's mission in the world, as well as sharing in teaching, equipping, and advocating for justice and unity. Additionally, the council strives toward relationships with churches of Methodist and other traditions through ecumenical partnerships. The Council of Bishops also assigns bishops to the governing boards of general agencies and other ministerial bodies. The council is led administratively by an executive committee, which includes a president and other officers. Every 4 years, the council selects one bishop to present the episcopal address at General Conference. In summary, the Council of Bishops provides spiritual and temporal leadership to the overall church. By doing this, the Council of Bishops seeks to strengthen the church to carry out its mission to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. To learn more, check out Division 3 of the Constitution of the United Methodist Church in the Book of Discipline or visit our website at resourceumc.org.
Okay, so that is the Council of Bishops. By the way, our bishop is Bishop Reverend Jonathan Holston, and he's been our bishop for 4-year sessions. And again, like the Board of Ordination, he's stuck. We're languishing, I think is the official term. We're waiting for the next general conference. So he's continuing to serve. He is really cool. I got to know him. He took the group that I was ordained, our group that was ordained the year after we were officially finished, which was cool because that was the 60th anniversary of the ordination of women. So, and then he took that group of us, we had to pay, to Israel. So I got to travel with him and his wife and some of his family. He's a lot of fun. A lot of really good information, good teacher. He's a teacher preacher too, so he and I get along. But yeah, our bishop is Bishop Holston. Oh, that's awesome. I was wondering about him for the 110, but it depends on whether or not he'll still be here. You know, if they push General Conference to 2024, he'll still be our bishop, but he might not at that point. So we'll see. And then, so bishops can serve 2 years, and then they can serve another, not 2 years, 2 sessions, 2 4-year chunks, so 8 years. And then they can serve another 4 years in a missional capacity. We actually have 3 missional annual conferences in the United Methodist Church. So we have annual conferences around the country, but we also have 3 that are intentional international missionary work, and they're hybrids of homes and missionaries. So we have the Alaska Missionary Conference. We have Redbird, which some of you may have heard of, but that's kind of the closest one to us. Redbird is like a little bit of a home and a little bit of Sagahatchee and a little bit of a lot of different things. And then the last one is the Oklahoma Indian Missionary Conference. And that was formed about the same time as the Trail of Tears, because there were Methodists on the Trail of Tears. And when we get to do the history part, we'll talk some more about that. My background, by the way, my undergrad is history. So we're going to dig into that because that's fun for me. But that Oklahoma Missionary Conference, Indian Conference, is kind of goes back to our roots of justice and just providing an opportunity for the kids there to get to go to school, so many things. And to the best of my knowledge, the Methodists haven't been involved in some of those things we've been hearing about in the indigenous population of wiping out all of the traditions of Indians and the mass graves and all of the things that have been coming up in the news. If you've been paying attention to any of the indigenous news, to the best of my knowledge, we as Methodists have not been part of that, which is so good. So, the last group I wanted to highlight, and this is the last video I have, I promise, and we're getting towards, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I know these attention spans, so give yourself a little wiggle. And this last group is the Judicial Council, which is sometimes called the highest court in the land, or the Supreme, it's like our Supreme Court. And let's learn a little bit about this, and then we're going to talk some more about annual conferences.
This is a quick overview of the Judicial Council and how it serves the United Methodist Church. There are 3 main bodies that govern the United Methodist Church: the General Conference, the Council of Bishops, and the Judicial Council. The Judicial Council determines the constitutionality and legality of acts or proposed acts of the general, jurisdictional, central, and annual conferences based on the Church's constitution and other parts of the Book of Discipline. The Judicial Council is made up of 9 members who are elected during regular sessions of General Conference. All of the Judicial Council members and alternates serve on a volunteer basis and are active in their local churches and other parts of the connection. Members sometimes have a legal background, and several active and retired judges have served. The council more and more reflects the diversity of the global church. The 2017-2020 council has the first president from a central conference. 4 clergy and 4 laity always serve on the Judicial Council, with the 9th seat alternating between clergy and laity. A member's term lasts 8 years, and they can serve 2 successive terms. However, a member who has served 16 years must sit out for at least 4 years before standing for another election. Each General Conference elects the number of members whose terms expire at that session. The Council of Bishops submits nominees. General Conference delegates can make additional nominations. The Judicial Council meets for a spring and a fall session each year. Their docket, the items to be ruled on, regularly includes reviews of all decisions of law made by bishops, matters which have been appealed to them, and requests for declaratory decisions. Although there are sometimes open hearings before the Judicial Council, deliberations of the council are closed. The Judicial Council sets its own rules and procedures and elects its own president, vice president, and secretary. Appropriate bodies can submit a petition for a declaratory decision to the Judicial Council. At issue is the meaning, constitutionality, or legality of some legislation or action of the General Conference or some other body. These requests are reviewed, and a docket is created for each session. The docket may also include reviews of decisions of central conferences or jurisdictional committees on appeals. The docket is then posted on the Judicial Council's website. After a ruling is made on questions of church law, appropriate parties are notified, and the decision is published online. An affirmative vote of at least 6 members shall be necessary to declare any act of the General Conference unconstitutional. When the Judicial Council declares any provision unconstitutional, the Book of Discipline is revised. All decisions are final. However, the Judicial Council can accept requests to reconsider a prior decision. To learn more, check out Chapter 7, Part 6 of the Book of Discipline, or visit resourceumc.org.
Okay, so that's kind of our governance. By the way, if you ever want to look at the Book of Discipline, I have a copy in my office, always, and there should be, Laura, there's a couple copies in the library, right, of the Book of Discipline? Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a couple copies in the book of the Book of Discipline. Yeah. Laura says they may have walked away, but they should be there. And you can also find a lot of this online. You can actually just Google UMC Book of Discipline and then type in the subject you want. And oftentimes it'll pull up that particular paragraph and the whole thing. In fact, sometimes I do that because it's easier than trying to surf through the book. It's easier to just, I put my book in store. Yeah, I have mine out here. I don't know what I said to it, but at any rate, here it is. Sometimes it's easier than flipping through to just quick Google, where is it? Because the Book of Discipline is big, and it's not written very big, and it's also written in a little bit of legalese. So it's not always the most lay accessible, but when you dig into it, it's got a lot of good stuff in there. So that is the General Conference, the Council of Bishops, and the Judicial. So our sort of structural, our spiritual, and then our sort of legal kind of group. And I told you before when we first got started that the Methodist Church is not a flow chart so much as a bunch of circles that overlap. So you'll see on your screen, and you'll see up here on this screen, and I'm going to slide over where you won't be able to see me, but you can listen. We are the local church. So this top mustard color circle that says local church, this is Casey United Methodist Church. So this is us, or Winsboro First United Methodist, or wherever we happen to be. We are part of a district. Who knows what our district is? Audience participation. What's our district? The Columbia District. Yay! And we are part of what is the name of our annual conference? South Carolina. And we are unusual in that the whole state is one annual conference. There are lots of annual conferences that are like a chunk of a state, or maybe 2 states, depending on where they are, or even more, or they may be like a little part of Texas and a little part of Tennessee, or whatever. They're going to be a little part of things, but they're always going to be kind of adjoining places that make sense with the geography of the area. And then we are part of the Southeast jurisdiction. So on the video, you heard about jurisdictions. There are 5 jurisdictions in the United States, and we are part of the Southeast jurisdiction. I grew up in New York as part of the Northeast jurisdiction. So I know a little bit more about their structure, particularly the youth things, because I was involved at that level there. But the Southeast jurisdiction is where we are, and it's the southern states. It's kind of the Bible Belt, but that's our area, our jurisdiction.
And then the central conferences, you may have heard that on the video too. Those are the non-United States conferences. So these are the ones that are in Africa. These are the conferences that are in Asia. These are the conferences that are in the Philippines. These are the conferences that are not the United States. And then, of course, we have General Conference, which is everybody. And when they meet, remember, we have to have 600 to 1,000 people there. So it's not a small feat to get General Conference together. Not only are we up against COVID obstacles, we also just have to get a whole lot of people together. So there's a lot going on there. And then, of course, you guys have just learned today about the Council of Bishops and the Judicial Council. But all of this is sort of circles upon circles that go together. By the way, this here that says Episcopal area, that is the one or more annual conferences where maybe it's an annual conference that doesn't have their own bishop, but they share. That's what they're talking about. Bishops can set the pastoral assignments in their area. By the way, in the Methodist Church, one of the things that's good to highlight, because we are in the Bible Belt, in the Methodist Church, we're an itinerant appointment system. So I am put here by the bishop. So when I was ordained, the bishop laid his hands upon my head. He's got really big hands. He used to play basketball. He could prong my whole head. And I was like, don't mess up my hair. And actually, when I was ordained, I'll tell you this funny story. When I was ordained as a provisional, John and I got married the day before annual conference because we're so smart. So smart. And so we went to annual conference for our honeymoon. But I had to stand up before annual conference meets, before all the people come, the clergy gather together. So I had to stand up before the clergy council and say, Bishop, my name is actually now Cook. And it got a big laugh. And he told me, make sure to not have a baby during annual conference. And Leonard was born almost during annual conference. So had it been not COVID, he would have. So all that to say, the bishop lays his hands upon each of us as clergy and says, take thou authority and go out into the church and lead and serve. As an elder in the United Methodist Church, I'm called to word, which is the Bible, to order, which is all of this Methodist stuff, and also the order of service. So how we organize the actual, like call to worship, all the bits and pieces of service. And I'm called to sacrament, which is the Methodist Church, which is communion and baptism, and then service to missions, which is kind of good for me because my favorite thing is say, let's go do something. Let's go serve. Let's go be the hands and feet. But the bishop gives that authority to us and says, go and do and serve. And we are then put in a particular location. And my first appointment was Epworth Children's Home, which was really fun. And then I got to go and do a country church, which was Winsboro, First United Methodist. It was a good learning experience. And then I get to be here, which is really cool. And I hope to be here a while, but I serve at the pleasure of the bishop. So it depends on the bishop whether or not I get to stay for a long time or a little time. But I will say that our current bishop is advocating for longer stays because organizationally they have proven that leaders who stay longer are able to affect actual lasting change and ministry. So hope to get to be here for a while. But that's something that's good to point out is unlike some of our other churches, which maybe have a call system, like the Lutheran Church, they have a call system. So the minister will come in and kind of audition and have an interview. And then the church decides if they're going to call them. In a call system, the appointments are much, much longer because the church calls you and you could stay your whole career. A lot of Baptist churches are like that too. They have a call system and they can stay forever and ever and ever. Yeah, by the way, the United Methodist pastor, I can serve in a Lutheran church, a Presbyterian church, an Episcopal church. We are in full connection with these denominations. So you could have a Lutheran pastor here. We can all play well with each other, which is kind of interesting. So that's an interesting thing. So that's how the appointment system works. That's worth pointing out because we are here in the South and that's a little bit different. I wanted to give you a map. So these are the jurisdictions in the United States. So again, I told you we're part of this Southeast jurisdiction, which is that sort of mustard color in the bottom of your screen. I don't have my reins front today. I'm having trouble with my left and right. And then this is the Northeast jurisdiction. This is where I grew up. I grew up right outside of Buffalo, New York. And then we have, I don't want to mess up the names unless I look, the North Central, which is up here in that sort of snowy area of the world. And then we have the South Central, which is our deserty states and Texas. And then out here is the Western jurisdiction, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, this is the one out on the coast. So there are 5 jurisdictions here in the United States. And then again, those central conferences, the central jurisdictions, which you can see here, are the ones that are not in the United States. So we as United Methodists cover a lot of territory. We cover a lot of ground, and there are a lot of United Methodists around the world, which I think is worth pointing out. That's pretty cool. All right, I've got one more thing I'm going to share with you. She had to go early. She told me about that. Nobody's upset. Miss Mitchell had to go. But here's your bit of trivia. Does anybody know when the first annual conference was ever held? So the first annual conference was held in 1744 in England, and it was called by John Wesley. So when we get into the history part, we'll talk about how John Wesley started Methodism in England and then came over to the United States. He was a total flop. His story here is really kind of interesting. It didn't work out well for him. He went back to England, and then he sent back Thomas Coke and Francis Asbury, and they're the ones that really built up what we know now as the Methodists, and eventually we know now as the United Methodists. He did. He came here before Altar's Gate, and he had a terrible experience. He tried to minister to the Indians, and instead of coming in and getting to know them, he came in and wanted to he was like a really bad missionary. You have to come in and become just like us. You have to become English. Yeah, he was a mess. But the first official annual conference, so that was the one that John Wesley held in England. The first one here in the United States was called by Thomas Rankin, who was one of the preachers sent by John Wesley. And it was the first official Methodist preacher gathering, and it was in Philadelphia, which was surprising to me to learn back in the day because so much of John Wesley's initial work in the United States was down around Georgia and down around Savannah, that area. But the first official United Methodist annual conference was held in Philadelphia at the historic St. George Church. And it's on my bucket list of places to go someday. And the annual conferences that look like what we have now, those began in 1784 when the Methodist Episcopal Church began. And we'll talk some more when we get to the history about how the Methodist Church has gone from being the Methodist Church to the Methodist Episcopal Church, and then when we united with the United Brethren, which some of you may remember because that was 1968. So there's a lot of rich history there that we're going to get to dig into. But I think that is all of our organizational and structure, and you kind of know where we're going. The next time that we're going to gather together will be October 19th. We will have the Zoom option. We will have the in-person option. And then what I'm going to do with this Zoom is I'm going to edit it and then post it up to our YouTube page and post the link to that on our Facebook page. So all that is to say is if you miss a session, you're going to be able to watch it later. But it's better to come because you can ask questions and interact and make it more interesting. And as you think of those questions in the next couple of weeks, next week or so, don't wait too long because I need to be able to integrate them into what I'm writing and what I'm working on. But I really want to hear your questions because I don't want to be boring. I want to hear your questions and what you guys want to learn. So I think that's everything. I want to conclude us in prayer. Next time we gather, we'll have some more scripture too. But today was kind of that balcony view and to kind of get an idea of what to expect. So let us pray. Good and gracious God, we thank you for this thing called Methodism, and we thank you for making us Methodists. We ask that you open our eyes and our hearts and our minds so that we can learn more, so that we can better serve you. In your name we pray. And all God's people said, Amen.